Shovel Knight feels like something pulled straight out of another world. A world where the development cycle for the NES and all the platformers we so lovingly associate with it never stopped. It's as close as any developer has ever come to the concept of what a NES game would play and feel like were created in today's market. Shovel Knight does a commendable job of playing with the player's expectations. Everything from the way the controls are laid out to the retro-clad aesthetics and chiptune soundtrack set up certain expectations that are just as quickly usurped, resulting in a game that is unrelentingly surprising at every available opportunity. You'll find a lot of classic video game cliches strewn throughout Shovel Knight, but it puts each of them in such a unique context that they feel like wholly new original concepts this time around. Boss fights can break out in the middle of item shops, and item shops themselves can appear midway throughout a dungeon where you'd least expect them. Even the mechanics that work in the level design echoes this concept. Instead of shifting around platforms and ledges to create new pathways, you instead change the nature of existing obstacles to turn lethal hazards into new walkways. The platforming is just as dynamic and surprising as the rest of the game, and it gets increasingly so as the game marches on. The entire game feels like a love letter to 30 years of established platformer gameplay tropes, all of which make an inevitable appearance at some point throughout the 5-hour adventure. There's a DuckTales-style jumping system, a Castlevania-inspired overworld, and an upgrade system that wouldn't be out of place in any Mega Man game. The levels themselves utilize fairly modern design ideas, with entire sections centered around the concepts of changing gravity, manipulating silhouettes, or even purposely abusing invincibility frames in order to traverse obstacles. There's even a death system that's eerily reminiscent of that of Dark Souls, though it's nowhere near as unforgiving. Death sees you dropping about a third of your currency at the location of your demise, which can be retrieved provided you reach that same spot later on. There's also a system that allows you to shatter checkpoints within levels to acquire more gold, but this leaves them unusable from there on out. Overall, the currency system is really smart, as it constantly asks the player to balance the risk of having to start an entire level over with the rewards of gaining access to upgrades much quicker. It's a shame then that the upgrades themselves are a bit underwhelming. Most of them are standard linear health and mana upgrades that are available via vendors spread across the game's world. You'll acquire the vast majority of these fairly early on, and that serves only to negate the incentive of shattering checkpoints, as the risk doesn't become worth anything. There are some interesting pieces of armor available later on and offer up some unique abilities, but chances are you'll only be buying the one that best suits your style of play and sticking to it from there on out, as the other effects aren't nearly as enticing as they otherwise could have been. Shovel Knight runs a gambit unique to this genre in particular. Because the control scheme and range of actions are so narrow and strictly defined, the game relies heavily on the level design to deliver a quality experience. Luckily, Shovel Knight is exceedingly well put together in that regard. Every new hazard is introduced at an accommodating pace, with the player generally able to observe it at a safe distance before diving in and seeing how it affects the general flow of gameplay. You're expected to get familiar with these new mechanics and all their ins and outs, as they'll eventually be put to use in the corresponding stage's boss encounter. The bosses themselves prove to be my favorite part of Shovel Knight. It pays to memorize each of their movement sets, though experimentation is just as vital if you want to make quick work of them. In addition to putting up a really decent fight, each of them is brimming with well-written personalities, and there are enough unique personas in the cast that it feels very diverse in spite of every major character actually being just another knight. The story as a whole is without a doubt the biggest surprise Shovel Knight had up its sleeve for me. It starts off as seemingly yet another tale of a brave knight saving a damsel in distress, but it evolves into something much more than that very quickly, as multiple factions come to the table, each sporting its own agenda. The story is as serious as you want it to be, and there's a great deal of whimsy about the whole proceedings. Towns and vendors are become a joy to visit, as there's not a single citizen who doesn't sport a smile or a phrase of snappy dialogue. The romance between Shovel Knight and Shield Knight takes center place, however, and it's without a doubt one of the best examples of a romance between two characters I've ever seen in a game. Shield Knight is just as capable as her spade-wielding counterpart, and the two of them are each cast as being incomplete without the other. This all leads up to one bittersweet moment towards the end, where this bleeds over into gameplay, serving to hammer home that Shovel Knight and Shield Knight are utterly lost without each other. Right down to the core, there's a strong theme of nostalgia that serves to pull everything together. Shovel Knight doesn't rely on bad referential humor, and the ritual visuals are anything but skin deep. The team behind this went hardcore in terms of limiting themselves to the limitations of the NES, though they did cheat here and there, if only for convenience's sake. The game takes HD pixel art and scales it to match the NES's original resolution, though they haven't made accommodation for modern monitors. The music, which is utterly outstanding and available for free on their Bandcamp, emulates the exact sounds the NES was capable of, but with an expanded range of the Famicom. The artists even mostly stuck to the NES's original color palette for most of their work. A few extra colors were added here and there to improve some scenes, but to the casual observer, Shovel Knight looks like it would be right at home on a cartridge. Shovel Knight is not just a game that is faithful to the game design principles and limitations of the past. It has enough charm and personality of its own to be labeled as a timeless classic. The art, the music, and the gameplay is good and worthy of just as much love as all the counterparts that inspired it. It's a game that remembers what's good about the past and embellishes those aspects while cutting off and refining some of the more unsavory parts of its lineage. Hey there, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed your time with it. If you want to support more content like this and more content in general for the Restored homepage, please do check out our Patreon link below. All donations go back into creating more content for the homepage, and even the smallest of donations are greatly appreciated.